There's no bribes under the table?
They're supposed to be completely anonymous, so no bribing is supposed to be happening. But if we do hear of anything or made aware of anything, then we have to step those voters down.
Of course.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Don't need to say the place. What was funny about the experience? So, for example, when Sarah Headley Hymas came on, she told me about South Korean restaurant, and the theme was poo. Poo plates. And she said that was the experience, and she loved it.
I left Dubai when I was 16. I went to boarding school in the UK, and then I started working at a film and TV production company in Soho. We would travel to film markets like Cannes.
Welcome back to the Chef JKP Podcast. On the show this week, we have the one and the only Claudia De Brito. She's a freelance journalist, the Gulf Academy Chair for MENA's 50 Best Restaurants, and MENA Vice Chair for the world's 50 Best. Claudia, welcome to the podcast.
James, thank you very much for that lovely introduction.
Oh, well.
The one and only, my goodness.
So look, you have quite an incredible job.
I do.
I would say. But I want to go back to the very, very, very beginning.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me about your childhood and food growing up.
Okay, so I am a very strange little bird. I am Portuguese, Cape Verdean, born in Singapore, raised in Dubai.
Wow.
So there was always a lot of food from everywhere in our house. And my mom is an excellent cook, and she was always very, very curious. I think that's what where my sister and I got our love of food. She, when they moved to Singapore from Lisbon back in the 70s, my mom just immersed herself in local markets and would go over to neighbors' houses and learn how to make, Malaysian food or Indian food or, whatever it was. And it was such a cosmopolitan community back then in Singapore. And I think, we grew up eating food from everywhere and then cooking food from everywhere. And, my mom would do this thing where she would take the weekends off. And my sister and I would be sent into the kitchen, and bless them, they would eat whatever we cooked for them, which could not have been easy at times. But it really encouraged us to kind of get out there and do it and express ourselves. And I think after a while, it becomes not only something that you enjoy doing, but it's a really important skill to have. It's a way of sharing your culture as well. And, there were always so many dinner parties, at least once a week in our home. And so I grew up with someone who loved to host, who loved to cook. And so, yeah, that's where my love of food came from. I then was lucky to be able to translate that into my career and what I do now. But yeah, the seeds were planted at a very early age.
So which is your favorite? Is it Portuguese or Singaporean or Dubai?
I would say Dubai, because it's such a melting pot of everything. We're so lucky here where we have amazing food from everywhere. You can go into Mina Bazaar and get, the best chaat, and you can go to, Knife and get amazing breads and, kanafe and satwa for shawarmas. And, we have such a diverse food scene here. And yeah, obviously we have DIFC with all the shiny places. But, I grew up in Dera. And there are people who have lived here for a very long time and have never been to the other side of the river, apart from going to the airport. So there's this narrative that Dubai is all, shiny buildings and fancy restaurants, but it wasn't like that when I was growing up here, and I try to kind of remind myself of that as often as possible.
But I think that's what makes Dubai so incredible.
Yeah.
Is that you have such a diverse melting pot of cultures, of foods, of people.
Yeah.
I think we're very fortunate,
Absolutely.
to be honest, and that's what I love about it. But growing up, you must have seen so many things, and the way Dubai developed through the years.
Yeah. So I'm probably aging myself, but
No. But then, after growing up and you got an education, you went into film and TV.
I did. So my career is probably the most non-linear career that exists. But yeah, so I left Dubai when I was 16. I went to boarding school in the UK. And then I started working at a film and TV production company in Soho. And part of that was we would travel to film markets like Cannes, and I would write treatments for films. There's something in film called a log line, which is summarizing the concept of a film or a TV show in one sentence. And what they say in production is if it takes more than a sentence, probably not a good idea. So I would always get stuck with doing that. So I'd be like, oh, Claudia, you like to write, you do it,
Oh my gosh, what a job.
And I loved it. I really loved it. And so we would then write treatments for films. When you're selling a film or a script or a concept, you have to write a treatment to the people who are then going to develop it or buy it. And those are the times that I really loved my job. So writing was always a thing, even when I was working in film production and sales. And then I came back to Dubai. So that was in London. I came back to Dubai.
How long did you do that job in particular?
That job, goodness, about 4 years, I would say. Yeah.
So you spent some time in London?
I did. Yeah. Well, I was in the UK for 8 years in total, and I was at boarding school and then uni and then working for a while.
Okay.
And then I came back to Dubai and still worked in film production and sales, and then my boss went back to LA. And I was kind of at a loose end, and a friend of a friend needed someone to write the film section of their magazine. At the time, there was Dubai Film Festival, there was Gulf Film Festival, Middle East Film Festival.
Oh my God.
There was a lot going on in film. They were building Studio City, and Dubai was going to be, a center for the region in terms of film production. A City of Life had just come out, Ali Mustafa's film. And so we were all thinking, okay, this is going to be the future of Dubai. And so I came on board to write the film section, and then film became arts and culture, became food. And whenever I was writing about food, whenever I was interviewing chefs and restaurateurs, again, I really felt like, this is what I'm meant to do, or this is what I love doing. And so, and then I got other opportunities to write for other magazines, and I ended up as the editor of Hotelier Middle East. Before that, I was a caterer, and then during the pandemic, things changed.
So look, what I want to ask you about that particular time when you were when you went from London, you came back here. You did that, and then you started being really passionate about food writing and restaurateurs and things like this.
Yeah.
And then when you came to the caterer and Hotelier Middle East, I wanted to ask you, what's a typical day like for an editor? Because we, from the chef's perspective, you just come in, have a chat, or a bite to eat, whatever it may be, and then you're off again. Mm-hmm. But it's not, is it?
No.
It's actually quite a full-on day.
It is. I mean, it depends on every publication is different. Every publishing house is different. It depends on how big your team is, even. So there are some editors with, big teams who can, spend or luxuriate for a week over an interview and have the privilege of doing that. It wasn't quite my experience. I was on a very small team, and we were having to put out a lot of content at the time. I think it was something like 15 stories a day online.
Whoa.
And then we're having to do social content, and then we're having to every publication had a YouTube page, so we were having to produce content for our YouTube channel, and then the magazine as well. So it was the days were very, very long, and yeah, we would go interview, transcribe, hopefully get that up. But within the first 2 weeks, so it's not really how the day goes, it's how the month goes when you're working on a monthly publication. So the beginning of the month, you plan out your print edition, and then once that's all planned out, you get your interviews kind of locked in. Kind of where you make a flat plan, which is kind of like the plan of where all the pages are going to go in the magazine. And then you kind of get on with the day-to-day of just putting out this content that just is kind of relentless. But that's what you need to do to get your numbers up so that you are, you rank well on Google and things like that. So an editor now has to be, 4 or 5 different things in one,
Because it's quite... How can I put it? It's one thing me doing like 15 dishes.
Yeah.
Right? But writing 15 different articles per day.
Yeah.
That must be quite stressful.
Yeah.
Stressful in the sense that, okay, I'm not a writer.
Yeah.
And I can do basic things. But you guys, okay, you've trained in writing and things like that. But still, 15. That's quite intense.
It's a lot,
right?
But it's I think it's probably a standard,
right.
across the industry. It's a very lucky editor now that doesn't have to do that, especially with the way that print is going. Obviously there's still prestige in print, and especially in this region, people still like to see themselves in print and value that. But I think mainly it's going online, and the way people consume is if there isn't something new when they refresh the page, then they'll go somewhere else.
Okay. So
it's about maintaining and retaining that attention span that is so small.
Yeah.
So it's about that. No one was trying to make our lives miserable. It's just
no.
the nature of the beast,
But at the same time, specifically as you were mentioning, sort of pandemic sort of era, let's say, there were around 135 five-star hotels at the time. Back then, 13,000 restaurants. But some were real restaurants, some were just kind of takeaways, let's say.
Yeah.
But still, there was something opening up every day, something new happening every day.
Yeah.
So to keep up must have been quite intense.
Yeah. I mean, it got to a stage where we're like, well, we can't cover every single new opening. We just can't. So, then we started, looking at strategies, and maybe we're covering trends, or maybe we're covering, kind of disruptors, or because there was, and at the time, before, let's say early 2020, there's so much going on, and the rise of the food halls and all of that. There was a lot, there's a lot happening.
So then 2020 happened.
Yes.
I want to ask you about pasta. Because for your job and what you do, I talk to a lot of food writers.
Yeah.
And whenever I interview them, I always ask them, do you cook? And they're like, no, we don't cook. We never cook. We appreciate food, but we don't have the time to cook.
Yeah.
But with you, your kind of looks like your meditation is almost just to cook some really beautiful pasta dishes from scratch.
Yeah.
May I add?
Oh, thank you.
How did you get into that?
It was during the pandemic. I kind of dusted off an old pasta machine in the back of the cupboard that Probably hadn't seen the light of day, probably since had been bought. And like you said, people were doing sourdough. I'm not really a big...
Banana bread.
Yeah, and banana bread. I hate bananas and bread. So hate is a strong word, but I prefer not to see bananas ever in my life. And I love pasta, and we weren't really going out. And like one day I was just really craving just a simple, just a simple dish, like, aglio olio, and I was like, you know what, I can make it myself. Why don't I try? Like, I looked up I think it was a Bon Appetit recipe, and yeah, it just became something that I took such pleasure in doing. And it was something that then I could enjoy at the end. And I was sending it out to friends. I was then making it at a rate that I couldn't really be eating it on my own. And so I was sending it out to friends, and because we couldn't be together, obviously. And it became a way for me to not only meditate and kind of give myself a little break from overthinking of, because nobody knew what was going to happen. Like,
Yeah, of course.
A little break from that anxiety that everyone was feeling, and I could then also share it with my loved ones and my friends, and yeah, it became something that I really enjoyed and has kind of stuck around. And I get that food writers that say that they don't cook because they don't have time or the inclination, but I think cooking helps me to understand a little bit more. I mean, obviously I can't compare it to what a chef would do or the pressure that a chef would feel, but I know that when I host, a little dinner party or a supper club and I see a plate come back, I mean, it's never happened for a plate to come back, but for example, if hypothetically that happened, I would feel heartbroken. And it's just a tiny little silly example of, oh my God, I get it. If someone comes to your restaurant and they don't know the time and effort that's gone into it, they don't know the process of, going from choosing an ingredient and then seeing it on your plate. And they, it comes to them as a finished product that they can then tear apart if they choose to.
It's not easy.
It's I can only sympathize with you guys. It's not an easy thing to go through.
And how is your pasta journey now? Because you started off with, like, let's say tagliatelle or something nice and easy, but now you're like full on. And I'm gonna drop a name if that's okay. But I just had a little pasta and agnolotti masterclass with Enrico Crippa. Oh my God.
And to be honest, I was shaking. But I mean, with anything, it's consistency and practice, and if I can do it, anyone can. But yeah, I try and do it once a week at least. And yeah, your fingers get a little bit more dexterous and you start to feel kind of when the dough is ready and when it needs what. And you start to be able to relax a little bit more around it and play around. And it's getting to a point where it's really fun. And, pasta is just infinite. You can play around with shapes and fillings and, it's really interesting if you then choose to take a deep dive into the regions, and it's really interesting. I love it.
So then, whilst all of this was going on,
yes,
how were you approached for the top 50 best? Because this is like for me, this is for the region.
Yeah,
it was and it is a really huge deal.
Yeah.
San Pellegrino being in the region.
Yeah.
It puts us at a global level. Mm-hmm. Everyone is watching what we're doing, but to be chosen, to represent the region, I think is incredible. How did they come to you?
It came to me via an Instagram DM. I thought that it was. I
what?
thought it was a
Stitch up.
joke. Yeah, I thought someone was stitching me
Delete.
up. I was like, oh god, someone's like slid into my DMs, and I tried to. Yeah. But it was this wonderful journalist called Laura Price, and she sent me a message, and it was basically asking if I knew, first of all, what the organization did, what they were, and I was like, yes, yes, I know. And
I don't like to talk about it, but yeah.
I'm kind of your biggest fan. It's weird. I'd had them on my, Pinterest board, and I was a big fan of, or I still am, of Dominic Crenn, and I always followed what they did and was, obviously a very big fan. So when that happened, it was kind of an out-of-body experience, and they didn't message me offering me the job. They asked if I was interested, and nothing had been announced that they were launching in the region, so I had to sign lots of NDAs and keep it super quiet, and it was meeting the team over calls, and it happened over a period of several months, and there was a time where they went away for about a month, and I was like, oh gosh, that's not me. And regardless, even if it hadn't been me, my feeling was still, even if it's not me, I'm just so happy that it's coming here. But yeah, I got, the final kind of call, and it was really an amazing moment, and I felt really, really lucky.
Who was the person that told you that you got the job?
So William Drew.
Mr. William Drew.
Mr. William Drew is the director of content for 50 Best, and he's been just a constant support, and he's also like super passionate about restaurants and chefs, and a great supporter of the industry on a global level. And so, yeah, it's just nice to be able to call someone like that a friend now. And that's what 50 Best do really well, is they create community. It's, the list is a really small part. It's a part of, obviously, sorry, it's not a small part. It's a big part of what they do, but it's such a big ecosystem of community, of more established chefs supporting younger chefs. We have initiatives like 50 Next that are about amplifying kind of young and up and coming voices in the culinary world, and it's just, I'm really proud to be a small part of that.
Well, I don't think it's a small part. I think it's quite big, because, the region itself now, I'm not talking 10 years ago, I'm not talking 5 years ago, I'm talking now, the eateries, the restaurants and the chefs that we have here, I mean, it's unbelievable almost how it's exploded.
Yeah.
And you must have seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I had my first birthday in Dubai, so I have kind of seen the city grow, and in a generation, I think the progress that we've seen everywhere, in every sector, but I think especially F&B and hospitality has been nothing short of amazing. I think 5 years in Dubai is 30 years in Europe or the States, and that's no shade to those markets, but it's just the fact that we grow and learn so quickly, and we have the access to do things. We just really do. It's that dream it and do it mentality that has trickled down from leadership, and I feel really lucky to be in a place where, if you want to do something, if you want to do something creative and entrepreneurial, and, like just like you, James, if you want to do something, you can. And, I think that's really reflective in the restaurant industry, and quality is here, Yeah, we have a lot of volume, and it fluctuates between 13 and 14,000 restaurants in this city, which is a crazy statistic. but there's a lot of quality in there, and a lot of very talented chefs, and the homegrown scene is really, really becoming established, which I'm so proud of. It's, I can't wait to see what happens in, the next 5 to 10 years, where you will really start to see what Dubai cuisine is, and I think they'll have the support to do it, because of people like you and people who have really gotten in behind this young talent that's really emerging now.
So look, what I wanted to ask you,
yes,
quite specifically,
tell me.
You've obviously dined in a lot of restaurants. Now, if you compare, let's say, European top 50 best restaurants,
yes,
compared to the MENA restaurants, let's say,
yes,
right? What would you say is the one thing, because I know what I feel is lacking, but what do you think we could improve on, especially city-wide or UAE-wide when it comes to dining? What's the one thing that you think we could improve on to get us onto another level?
I think that what separates us from kind of the European restaurants is sense of place. So, but it's also a consequence of being in a desert here. If you go to Alba, you can dine at, these amazing restaurants, and they'll have beautiful ingredients on their doorstep, and they'll have heritage on their side, and history on their side, and tradition and storytelling, and all of that is translated into, a beautiful dish that and appears in front of you. It doesn't just appear, there are people working very hard.
Of course.
From a diner's point of view, is what happens. In the Middle East, I think, in general, because we import a lot of what we use, it's changing, and it will change. Because we're importing, it does feel derivative at times. It does feel like, okay, yes, we're using truffle and caviar and Wagyu and all of these things. And it might not feel as maybe authentic as other restaurants in, Europe or the States. What I would say is that our creativity maybe makes up for that. I think the fact that, out of maybe a lack of certain things, you come up with something else. And I think chefs here are super creative, and you have to be. And that's what I really appreciate about chefs here and restaurants here, is that they are super creative. But I think that's what the main difference is. In a restaurant in Europe, you get the terroir of a place.
Of course.
Here, not so much. But I think that will come. The Dubai style of cuisine will emerge. The country is 50 years old, and it will come. I think that will come. But I think what's exciting right now is the creativity that we're seeing. Tradition and terroir and all of that other stuff will come later.
I'm sure it will. So look, one thing that I'm sure a lot of people would want to know is, so let's say I've got my restaurant. I think I'm really good. I think I can be on the top 50, but I haven't been there for 3 years, let's say. What is the particular sort of judging criteria in order for the judges to be able to notice a restaurant or notice a chef and say, we need to take note of this particular venture?
So with 50 Best, we don't really have specific judging criteria. Our judges are from very diverse backgrounds, so it's not just industry people. We have chefs, so we have 3 different categories chefs, restaurateurs, media, and then well-traveled gourmands who are civilians who take it upon themselves to go to nice restaurants and travel, and their jobs have nothing to do with the industry, but they just really enjoy food. So we don't give them criteria. We don't say, oh, the restaurant has to be open a certain amount of time. We don't say it has to be a fine dining restaurant. We are not a fine dining list. It's just where what we do say is we give them, I think it's 18 months at the moment. Where was your best dining experience in the past 18 months or year? And, you know, it can be anything that stood out. It can be Ravi's. It can be, you know, a very expensive high-end restaurant, or it can be a plastic chair place. You know, it really doesn't matter.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought there would have been like, you know, judges who were sort of full-time, so to speak, this, that, and the other. So it's quite interesting to know that there are civilians who just travel on the list.
Yeah.
Journalists, I would understand, but it's also interesting that you have restaurateurs and chefs.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's quite a, you know.
They can't vote for their own restaurants.
Okay, very good. No cheating.
Cannot.
Okay.
But they also understand, you know, I think as a chef, you would know, like, you know, actually, or you would bring a different perspective to that than a journalist would, or that a layman would.
There's no bribes under the table?
As far as I know, no. But that's a very good question. We actually we turn our academy over by 25%. Sorry, not academy. Our voters over by 25% at least each year
to keep it fresh.
To keep it fresh, and also when people they're supposed to be completely anonymous, so no bribing is supposed to be happening. But if we do hear of anything or made aware of anything, then we have to step those voters down.
Of course.
And it's happened, unfortunately, where, you know, people try to use their status as a voter to...
no, of course, I can imagine it's not easy.
So that when that happens, we step them down, and it's very... you know, black and white. It's like, well, you know, you've exposed yourself.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, I would say not all, but most chefs. I'm not going to talk about restaurateurs.
Okay.
Talk about chefs. When you give the feedback, some of them can be very defensive because they let the biggest enemy get in the way, which is their ego, right? However, I feel that when somebody's giving you constructive criticism, I think it's the biggest gift possible, because they're not sitting giving you constructive feedback as a chef. They're giving it to you as a diner.
Yeah.
And have you encountered that in this job?
Yes. Yes. You know, again, and I think we said it at the beginning, where it's a very tough thing when it's tough to take, because it's a very personal and emotional thing to put out food every day. It really is, and I understand that. I think you have to know how to give criticism, and you have to know how to receive it.
Yeah.
And it has to be with the best intention on both ends, right? You have to receive it with good intentions, but you also have to give it with good intentions. Yeah. And I've seen it on both sides, where people maybe have been a bit insensitive and just feel like they need to be a bit, I don't know, spicy.
Right.
For the sake of it. You know, people going into a restaurant just as it's opened and, you know, slating it completely, and then putting it all over social media. Whereas, you know, there's someone in that kitchen that's working really hard. And if you have feedback, by all means do it, but give it sensitively, constructively, and privately. so, Instagram is not the place to
No.
be doing that.
Especially not,
Yes.
publicly.
And especially if you've been invited, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I also think there's this thing here where restaurants will do a soft opening, but they will charge full price.
Okay.
I don't agree with that. If you're doing a soft opening, you're essentially still training your staff. And I do think that you should recognize that by doing, taking something off the bill, doing like a 50% or 30% off, just as a gesture of goodwill, for the first week or two or whatever your soft opening period is. Because if you're telling me, or just don't say anything, but if you're telling me that this is the soft opening, you're telling me that things might still be, we're still figuring things out, which is normal,
Yes,
by the
of
way.
course.
It's normal. But if you're figuring things out, don't ask me to pay full price.
Yeah, full price is a bit...
Yeah. So I think there needs to be,
middle
bit
ground,
more,
yes.
There needs to be comprehension on both sides. So it's like, if I'm paying full price and like my orders are wrong and the food is, late or cold or, I have every right to feel a bit miffed about it. It's not a good experience. A good restaurant manager will probably recognize that, or, it doesn't always happen. So I think saying soft opening, we'll do 50%. Please come in. Please give us your feedback. Like if anything, wasn't to your liking, blah, blah, blah. I think that always helps.
Yeah, especially in a country like this where there is so much competition.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much competition here when it comes to restaurants, and we're spoiled. It's amazing, really.
Yeah.
But when somebody's coming in to critique, to give you listen, this part of the meal wasn't great. That person over there was talking when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah.
I agree with you, actually. I think, we're still finding our feet. We're training. Be kind to us, but please give us your feedback at the end.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give you a massive bill. No, I agree. I think it's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Thanks.
Now, it can't all be glamour, your job. But so what I mean by that is what are the toughest parts of the job? Because it's tasting, critiquing, because you're not eating for fun or for pleasure. It's a job.
Yeah.
So what's the toughest parts?
I try not to complain about it because this is a job that I never even dreamt of. But I think what I find tough is saying no.
No, in what respect?
So I'm going to sound like a total, but I get invited to a lot of things.
Sure.
I'm very lucky to be invited to a lot of things. And sometimes I feel guilty saying no. Actually, all the time I feel guilty saying no. I just don't have the time or bandwidth to do, more than one lunch and dinner every day.
No, I can imagine that. It's tricky because you must be invited to maybe 5 or 6 times in a day sometimes.
Sometimes actually, especially during event season and things like that. And sometimes I don't particularly want to go somewhere. Because I know it's not a good use of my time.
Right.
So either, it's really far away and I have, a 2-hour window where, by the time I get there, I'm going to spend maybe 45 minutes and it's not, it's not a good use of my time. And so that's the tough part, is saying no. And I need to kind of stop. I know I need to stop feeling bad about it, but I because I feel so lucky being able to do this, I feel bad not being able to go to everything or do everything to everyone, but do everything for everyone, but or go to every single, new opening, or, I never want to be the topic of conversation where people are like, oh, she thinks she's too good to come to anywhere, because I'm not. Like, we spoke earlier about, I love hanging out in Dara or Knife or like Mina Bazaar, Satwa or whatever. I'm not too good to go anywhere, but I think there are some instances where it's just not a good use of my time, and I also need time, I also need to have a personal life.
You're human, right?
Yeah. So yeah.
No,
yeah,
but
I
also,
find that hard.
Again, you're not the only person in the journalistic world who has said that.
Yeah.
Because it is tricky. To be able to do all these things at the same time when you have a city that is constantly, openings or restaurants or upgrades or new menu or this and that. Like it's vast.
Yeah. I've said that I can't do new menus. Because you can essentially do a new menu every month, and you can. And I feel very lucky to be invited, but it would be a better use of my time to go to a new place or support a new chef, or than to go and have a new menu at somewhere that I've already been.
I mean, the way I would speak to somebody like yourself, who is in an organization that is at a very top end level of gourmet, if it was me and my restaurant, I would invite you specifically with other colleagues to say, look, my aim is to be in the top 50. I really need your full-on critique to tell me where I'm going right and to tell me where I'm going wrong, because that's the only way I'm going to know. At the same time, I would do it with chefs who I trust, because they'll tell me the truth in the most constructive way possible. If I invite some Joe Blogs who doesn't know anything about food, and for some reason they don't eat kimchi chicken omelette, let's say.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. Deconstructed, they're going to go, well, it was rubbish. I like eggs and omelettes.
Yeah.
That's not going to give me... Yeah. You see what I mean? So I feel personally that, yes, your time is invaluable, and I agree with you, but also critiquing in the right way is such a key thing nowadays.
And people don't know how to do it,
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. You can't just be like, that was rubbish, you're rubbish, see you later. It doesn't make any sense.
There's a lot of noise out there, James, as you would know. And, social media has made it very democratic. So anyone with a smartphone can now, essentially be a food critic and can, get their opinions out there. And we're in a very small market here, and there aren't a lot of, maybe credible people. And, it used to be all about followers, and now we know that you can buy those. So I think you just have to be very careful about who you invite into your space as well, and who you open yourself up to. Because, there's a lot of not well-intentioned people out there.
100%. But I think that it's like that in
I had to think about that very carefully of how to say that. But
it's very politically correct.
Thank you. I've tried.
What would you say has been, let's say, so far for you, the most unusual cuisine that you've tasted? And I'm not saying unusual in like a horrible, I didn't like it. Just unusual.
I don't really know. I try to go into everything with an open mind, and because I grew up eating, everything from everywhere, we didn't have that idea of like, oh, exotic or unusual. It was just like, okay, well, this is what people eat, I was just in Latin America, and I mean, the food in Peru looks fake, like it's been invented by a very imaginative 5-year-old. You know, it's like pink and purple potatoes and, you know, big butt ants, and that's what they're actually called. And like, you know, it's just
coming soon to Dubai.
Yes, exactly. Ants with a BBL. But it's you know, it's so whimsical to eat in, you know, Mexico and Peru and Colombia. You know, their ingredients really are amazing, and maybe that I had absolute honor at eating at Central in November. Life-changing, honestly, and I'm not one for hyperbole, but it's just Virgilio's just on another level completely. You just, you know, you forget that you're, you know, there for work and a professional, and you just fall in love and become a fan, and are just happy to be there, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he works with his wife as well, right?
Yeah, Pia.
Yeah.
Amazing talent. I mean, it's just, you know, a supernova of talent, the two of them. So she's upstairs at Koye, and she also does a really beautiful cuisine. And again, she really celebrates what Peru is all about, and like it's this beautiful diversity and agricultural kind of heritage that they have is just incredible.
Wow.
And then they have this project up in Cusco where they, you know, document everything, like all the corn, all the potatoes, the grains, the everything. It's so rich. It's so rich there. Yeah. So yes, to answer your question.
So they really live it.
Yes. Yeah. They talk the talk and walk the walk, and
they do the
beautiful.
same things. It's about the land.
Yes.
Celebrating the land, the produce, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which, you know, calls back to what we were talking about before. You know, that it's when you're being served what has come from the land that you are eating in, you know. It's different. There's something emotional about it. There's something grounding about it that is different. We will get there.
And it does sound really emotional.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
From the ground and the story and the history.
It is.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to chefs and restaurateurs who have set out on the journey to get to the highest possible peaks? And what I mean by that is to get onto the top 50 list, to get onto Michelin Guide, Gomelo. What would be your advice for them?
Yeah, I would say don't. I would say let that not be your goal. Let your goal be to tell your story, would be to put out something that's authentic to you, to give people the best experience that you can, and then those things will come. You know, I think you really need to concentrate on the internal things that will then give you external recognition, but you need to work on yourself and your offering and what your intentions are first, and you know, and then success will come. You know, I don't think in any career you can set out saying, oh, you know, I want to be at the top, and then you're like, okay, what am I going to do to be at the top? I think you need to say I want to express myself and what I want to show the world in the best way possible, and then you'll get there.
Amazing answer.
Thank you.
Amazing piece of advice, because I think that's true. A lot of restaurants, they're just like, and chefs, I want to be 3-star, I need to, but it takes time, because you could be a 3-star Michelin chef, but you could be, you know, miserable for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You got to do what you love, and it's true. You're absolutely right. Now, you know, we're on a foodie and chef podcast.
What?
Yeah. So now here, you don't need to name names
Oh, gosh.
for the next question. But what I would like to know,
Yes.
from all of your dining experiences,
Yes, darling.
what has been your funniest either restaurant experience, which was like, it could be a disaster, it could have just been really funny, or funniest plate of food that you've ever had?
Funniest restaurant experience. Oh my gosh. Funniest that made me laugh. Oh my God, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't say it.
No, you don't need. So you don't need. I'm saying you don't need to say the place. You don't need to say the place. What was funny about the experience? So, for example, when Sarah Headley Hymas came on,
Yeah.
she told me about South Korean restaurant, and the theme was poo.
Oh,
Poo
God.
plates. And she said that was the experience, and she
Right.
loved it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not the answer I was expecting.
So that's an example for you, just so you understand.
Yeah, I've not had that experience. I haven't. Listen, I think it's always fun. Maybe not funny, haha, but it's always fun, or it's always enjoyable when restaurants pull out like these really cool personalized touches where they do like a deep dive on you. I love it when restaurants talk about, like, do research on me, basically. My favorite topic. It's there's a restaurant in Colombia, Bogota, called El Chato, and what they do is they make stickers of your face or of everyone who's dining with you, and then you get to take them home with you.
Oh, wow.
And it's so cool, and we had so much fun on that trip because we were just sticking them on each other, and like I've got the stickers of the people who were dining me on my laptop case, and it's just something that always reminds me of that experience. And it was so funny. I just wasn't expecting it, and to see you, it's always nice to see your face on anything, but
But that's really
that
cool.
was really cool. Like when they go the extra mile and do a personal touch like
Yeah.
that, that's always
That's an
lovely.
amazing experience.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the food, then it becomes
Absolutely.
the experience.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, thank you for that.
No worries.
Who would you say are your top 3 culinary gods, heroes? It could be writers. Who has influenced you the most? Top 3. So you've mentioned already the guys cooking in Central.
Yes,
I would say.
I'd say they're they're doing some amazing things there. People who inspired me, my mom. It's like really cheesy to say, but I don't think I would be doing this, or that I would have the love for food that I do, or cook, or anything, or appreciate it, had it not been for her had it not been for seeing her passion for it. And it's still something that we share today. So I really, I'm really grateful for that example. And then I love reading Giles Corran. I think, he's just a very entertaining read. I don't think we have a Giles in this region, really. And so, yeah, I think people who aren't afraid to stand out from the crowd are always interesting and inspirational to me. I think, people who really go the extra mile to support others are really inspirational to me. And there are a few examples here and globally. I know you said you don't have to name names, but I think Massimo Bottura and the work that he does is absolutely incredible. He's reached a point in his career where he doesn't have to be in the kitchen all the time, and he can use the platform that he has to do good. And I think, you know, that's an example we can all kind of
and that's an
follow.
Amazing example. He's incredibly inspirational.
Yeah.
And full of life.
Yeah, when he was
that.
here, I took him to see Salam Dakak from Beit Mariam, and he really was so generous with his time. And they talked about technique versus tradition, and she was like, I don't know technique, and he was like, yeah, but you have something that, you know, I don't.
Wow.
And it was, you know, one of those moments where I just felt so lucky to just be in the room, you know. And so, yeah, he's someone who is full of love and just very generous with his time. And for someone who's been in the spotlight for that long and been in the industry for that long and been working hard to build everything for that long, to still have the presence of mind to say, oh, I want to go spend some time at this little restaurant in JLT, I think was amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite ever childhood food memory?
Oh God, this is really weird, but I was thinking about it the other day. And in Portugal, we have like this, and I think most Mediterranean countries have this, but it's this really simple dish that is egg yolk and sugar, and it's called gemada. And my mom used to make it for me every afternoon at around 4, and it's basic, and I still remember it's like this little white cup, and she used to put an egg yolk in it and sugar, and I think it was like a little bit of lemon zest, and then she used to sit there kind of with a fork kind of whipping it, and then it would turn into like a zabaglione, so it would kind of double in volume, and it was like a mousse, you know.
Oh wow.
And I remember, and sometimes around the edges where she hadn't gotten, you know, like the sugar to dissolve, there'd be like these little crunchy bits, like the little crystallized sugar, and I was like crunch on them. And it's such it's such a vivid memory that I have. I don't think I could eat it now because I don't even like, you know, sweet stuff anymore. But, you know, your palate evolves and changes. But it was, I remember just watching her make it and then me eating it. And it was just always felt like such a treat. And it felt like, you know, she was making it for me, you know, because she was. But it would just felt so special, like it's so nurturing, you know. And
it was just sugar and egg?
Yeah, just sugar, egg, and then a little bit of lemon zest.
Wow.
And she would just sit there whipping it. She used to like put her knee up and just kind of support her the cup on her knee, and I can like see her doing it right now. It was so funny. Like it's.
Right, love
I
that.
Really
love that. What piece of advice would you have for 16-year-old Claudia?
Oh God. 16-year-old Claudia. You know, my sister is 6 years older than me, and she was always so cool, and I was always known as Jackie's sister. And 16 was when I left Dubai and I went to the UK, and I think for the first time I wasn't Jackie's sister. I was somewhere that Jackie hadn't been before. For the first time was at a school that my sister hadn't been, you know. And it was two things. She wasn't there to protect me, you know, not that she needed to, but it also meant that for the first time I was doing something that hadn't already been done, you know. And I think I would tell myself, it's going to be better than you ever thought it was going to be. Relax.
But that's cool, no?
Yeah, it was really great. I mean, I'm always Jackie's sister. I'm always going to be Jackie's sister.
Of course. But doing something new.
Yeah.
And also 16 to be in another country.
Yeah.
All of those sorts of things.
My parents were crazy, man, to let me go. I think about it now and I'm like, what were you doing letting me go off to the real world after being like brought up in
those
this
psychotic
tiny bubble.
British people.
Yeah, with these Brits, I could have come back, you know. But they, you know, they had faith in the way that they'd raised me, and they trusted me, and I was, you know, I was going to a very like small boarding school in the middle of the Surrey Hills. It's not like I was going to the streets of London.
No.
But
amazing.
but
no?
it was,
What an experience.
I look back at that now and I was like, wow, you guys.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? But thank you.
Now, for also specifically over the past 3 years, I've noticed, and I'm sure you have the same, people changing jobs. They want to do new things. They want to become food writers, food bloggers. From a professional perspective, what would be your best piece of advice for them?
For people who genuinely want to write about food?
Yes.
If you want to write, you should write. You should write every day. Excuse me. And it's a muscle that you need to train constantly. You also need to read a lot and read everything you can get your hands on, and you know, read a diverse range of content, you know, long form, short form, blogs, books. Please read books if you're going to be a writer, if you want to be a writer. It does your brain such good to switch off from a screen. And I know we're all on screens all the time, and, you know, to write, you have to be on a screen. But I would also say write with a pen and paper from time to time, you know, journal off a screen if you can, because it just allows your brain to be. So that, in terms of, you know, muscle, that's the advice I would give. And then when it comes to, practical advice of pitching and actually getting out there, you know, once you graduate, excuse me, once you graduate, it can be pretty intimidating because you don't have any experience, or, you know, maybe you've done an internship or maybe you haven't, but, you know, you have to pitch. You have to constantly be pitching. And by pitching, I mean read the magazine or the website or the newspaper that you're pitching to first, so you know what they actually do and what they're about.
And their demographic.
And what they've already covered and what their readership is like and who they're aiming at. Do your research. Tailor each pitch to that publication. Find out who the editor is. You know, we all have the internet now. You can do that. Address the person by name. If you don't know, call the publishing company and they will tell you. You know, receptionists can be very helpful sometimes. But go that extra mile to pitch properly, and you'll get your stuff out there. Or, you know, start a blog and just do it in the meantime, you know.
But be consistent, right?
But be consistent, yeah.
Claudia, wow.
Yes.
If anybody wants to get hold of you through, how is the best way that they can reach you directly?
Slide on into my DM. No.
Just like Top 50 Best did.
I am on Instagram, like everybody else. But also email, like, you know, if anyone has a question or wants to know how, you know, the voting works, or needs advice on anything, I do have an email address. Should I say it?
What I'll do is I'll put all of the emails and everything in the show notes.
Okay, yes.
But definitely
email
on Instagram, LinkedIn.
I'm not very good at LinkedIn, you know.
Okay.
I have to get better at LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Are you like
but
active?
I'm not. You know, it's like Facebook.
Like
you know, you look at it and then sometimes you reshare or whatever.
Exactly.
But a lot of people love LinkedIn.
Gosh.
They love it.
Full on LinkedIn people. And
there's a few people who are like on there twice a day.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, you have too much time on your hands, buddy.
I go on when I get a notification from my email saying that someone's messaged me about something,
Right.
or when someone tags me in something. But I'm not actively, posting on LinkedIn. Maybe I should be. I don't know.
Predominantly Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. Instagram is my
go-to.
is my go-to, I would say. Always on there. And then email. Also check the show notes.
Okay, done deal. I'll get that sorted. So we've spoken about your childhood growing up, types of food, college in the UK, here, the film and TV, which was really interesting. Yeah. The caterer, Mr. Simon Ritchie, have to mention him. The pasta, which is fantastic. Typical day, and then being asked to be within the top 50 MENA region, and then all of the things that go with that, how to improve judging restaurants, criteria, unusual cuisines, talking about South America, which is very close to my heart.
Of course, that's why I said it. That's the only reason I said it, James. I haven't been to Venezuela.
Culinary heroes or childhood heroes. Food memories, a lovely one, really nice. And advice for 16-year-old Claudia, which is good. And then advice for journalists. It's been absolutely amazing to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on here. Been some incredible insights. And I'm sure that your career will keep growing and growing and growing. And I know for a fact that you're going to keep singing and pushing the praises of the MENA region. So thank you for doing an incredible job. Thank you for coming on the show, and it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. And can I just say congratulations on season 4? And it's such an honor for me to be here. And you are amazing at what you do, and I can't believe you didn't start out doing this. I mean, forget the chef stuff. And I've had your food, but I much more enjoyed being interviewed by you. So yeah, congratulations! It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
James.
much. Thank you.